Mick Jagger političke ekonomije.
Gospodin Paul Krugman.
Jedan od najeminentnijih svjetskih ekonomista.
In my professional career, more than 30 years of tracking economic problems, economic crises, the normal thing was that the worst of it would be happening in the third world. That you'd be going to Indonesia or to Argentina to witness a crisis in full play. At this point, the biggest problems are in the advanced countries. It's a very amazing and not encouraging situation. I guess I will try to offer some hope along the way, but let's talk about the difficulties. So, just to start with the United States. In a way, the United States, if I can say, offers the pure version of the crisis. The problem with that is that in the economy as a whole, things add up. My spending is your income, your spending is my income. And if both of us try at the same time to pay down our debt by slashing our spending, what happens is that the economy goes into a slump, and we may both find our debt problems getting worse instead of better. So it's that basic adding up feature that turns an abrupt decision to start reducing debt into an economic crisis. This is not that unfamiliar. Japan went through this in the 1990s. Before that, something not too different from what we're seeing now happened in the 1930s, but here it is. And we were, it turns out, poorly prepared for the crisis. What you should be doing is, first of all, we should have policed that rise in leverage before the crisis, which we did not. Second, we should have responded with really effective fiscal policy, because that's in this moment when everyone in the private sector is trying to deleverage, someone has to step in and provide the demand. Third, we should have had effective measures for debt relief. None of these things have happened. Here's the European story. When I look at Europe, I try not to think about Greece, partly because it's too painful, partly because Greece is very different from the rest. So one thing that has happened in Europe, actually worldwide, is that people have talked about Europe as if it was all like Greece. And it's not. Greece is pretty much unique in having been almost purely a crisis of fiscal irresponsibility. Greece, you know, they really behaved irresponsibly. They lied about their budgets, all of that. Nobody else is like that. The creation of the euro laid the foundation for the crisis of the euro. When Spain, when Europe was integrated, when the single currency was created, people got relaxed. They thought that the big risks were over. Spain, Greece too, but Spain was on the euro, had the same currency. What could go wrong? So historic large differences in borrowing costs disappeared. Money became cheap. Money flooded into Spain, fueling at a gigantic housing boom, a huge housing bubble. By the way, the mechanism, this is, I think, kind of important for our current discussion. If you ask, you know, how did money flow into Spain, a lot of it was bank-to-bank lending. So if you want the kind of simplified picture, think of it as German Landesbanken lending money to Spanish cajas, which then finance what turned out to have been really bad real estate loans. I mentioned, I guess the reason to say that is that nowadays there's a lot of, certainly in the European core, there's a lot of moralizing. And it's the notion is that countries were irresponsible and they behaved badly. Well, in the transaction I just described, where it's a regional German bank that doesn't know what it's doing, lending money to a regional Spanish bank that doesn't know what it's doing, who exactly is the guilty party? Who is the sinner? And the answer is, I think, nobody and everybody. Just everyone was fooled. What would it take to make Europe workable as to get through this? So I think there are several things ranging from various degrees of idealism. The most idealistic view is that Europe can move quickly to becoming a true fiscal and banking union, like the one that the United States has. So that you can actually move quickly to create these kinds of guarantees, the safety net, if you like, that is what limits the crisis in the United States. It would be great if you could do that. It also seems to be quite unrealistic. So Croatia is not on the euro, but as far as the numbers go, it might as well be, right? It's got effectively a pegged exchange rate. It benefited from that wave, or if it was a benefit, it participated in that wave of excessive optimism. If we look at current account balances as a share of GDP, not that much to choose between Croatia and Spain. Not that different as a story. Much sharper move, but that's because actually the Spanish slump has been gradual. No, there haven't been any years of contraction at the pace that Croatia had briefly. Similar story. Real exchange rates. So this is an exchange rate adjusted for consumer prices. Not sure, this is the Bruegel Institute's measure. I don't know. Anyway, it's good enough. Similar story. Large rise in relative costs and prices. Looks a lot like a euro. Looks like a peripheral euro economy. Obviously, vast differences in detail, but the picture is not so different. Still has its own currency, so should we just devalue? And the answer is it's not that easy, because although there may be a domestic currency, the debt is in euros, which means that there are huge balance sheet implications. Plus, although it may not be a euro member, it certainly aspires to be part of the European picture. So what do you do? I feel I have two nightmares in my personal life. One is that I wake up and discover that I'm a university president, which is a job that's all responsibility and no authority. And the other is that I wake up and find myself the prime minister of a peripheral European economy. It's an incredibly difficult prospect. I think there's nothing one can do, I mean, except for the nuclear option, the Icelandic option. There's nothing you can do except to try to talk sense into the Troika, convince them that even more austerity is not right, and hope that they understand that we really need an expansion in the European core. So it's a long suffering process. The suffering can be brought to an end one of two ways. One is that Europe really does do what needs to be done. Much more aggressive expansion from the ECB, a little bit of fiscal expansion in the core. And the other is that all hell breaks loose and the whole thing falls apart, which I don't want to see. I don't think any of us want to see. So there's where you have it. We will, incredible mess. You wish that we had a time machine, that you could go back and burst into the meeting room at Maastricht in 1992 and say, don't do this. I think there's a very strong case that Europe would be in better position right now if it had never had the euro. But that's not the same. Okay, it's an old joke about the motorist who runs over a pedestrian and then says, oh, I'm sorry. Let me fix that, so he backs up and runs over the pedestrian again. Probably the euro was a mistake, but letting it collapse would be another terrible mistake. And so now comes the really hard part. And I'm sorry to say that I think the decisions here really are going to be made in Frankfurt and in Berlin.